So all we have.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
I'll maybe turn you.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing.
Good morning, everyone. Looks like we're about ready to begin. Good morning, everyone. Looks like we're about ready to begin. And so it's our pleasure to have with us former Governor Schreiber and talking to us today about, he has been talking with our seventh graders. Hopefully you got a good reception over there. And
It depends on the speaker, the reception.
So, we're just glad to have you here, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, first of all, to all of you. And sort of a special kind of privilege for me to be with you. Born and reared over at Zion Lutheran Church over on 21st and North Avenue in Milwaukee. And then grade school there, and Lutheran High School, and then a stint at Valparaiso University, and just watching how the church is meeting its challenges and growing, but then to meet with your seventh graders. And I was talking with one of our friends here, the former principal, who told me he served here for 34 years as principal. Where are you again? So thank you very much. But I told him that sometimes we think we get discouraged about what we think is going to be happening in the world, and like there's just really, really tough. But then you meet with a group of seventh graders, and you can see that there is a kind of emotion, a kind of concern, a kind of wonderment, a kind of just wanting and having the energy to make things better than what they are. And so to have visited with them for that period of time, that was a very special privilege for me. So, but what I understand we're here for is to talk about my book, My Two Elaines, and Learning, Coping, and Surviving as an Alzheimer's Caregiver. So that's the subtitle of the book. And what it does, it talks about my experience as a caregiver. What happened was when Elaine was approximately 63 years of age, she began to get lost going to and from places she was going to and from for the last 10 years. And she was a great cook, but sometimes would mess up her recipes so badly that she would cry. She would tell me stories about what we did last night or the day before, and it never happened. Well, that was the beginning of the second Elaine. The first Elaine, as I explained to the seventh graders, the first Elaine was the girl I met when I was a freshman at Lutheran High School in Latin class. And I fell in love with her right away. And we dated, and we went steady, and we got engaged. 4 children, 13 grandchildren, now 9 great-grandchildren. My friend, my advisor, my companion, my life's partner. If you would pray forever for the most wonderful partner in the world, and God would grant that prayer, it would be Elaine. And so that was the first Elaine. So when Elaine was diagnosed, I really didn't understand this disease. And because I really didn't understand this disease, we missed out on moments of joy. I just as a side note, I should tell you my first experience with dementia, that was when I was campaigning for governor back in 1978. And I gave a talk, it was in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and I gave this talk in Eau Claire, and after the talk was over, this elderly gentleman came up to me and he said, "Governor," he pounded me on, he said, "that had to be the world's most god-awful speech I've ever heard." Well, his wife was in the audience and she saw him and heard him. She came rushing over. "Oh," she said, "Governor, please excuse my husband. Please excuse me. He's old and he's senile and all he does is just repeat whatever he hears everybody else say." So that was the first experience. I want you to know, in talking about this issue of caregiving, and I concluded if there's one thing worse than Alzheimer's, it's ignorance of the disease, and ignorance of the disease by the medical profession and by caregivers, and also by family and sometimes churches and sometimes by friends. And what is so important to know as far as we caregivers are concerned, and what the medical profession has to be concerned about, and that is if there is a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, there are two patients: the person who is ill and the caregiver. 40% of caregivers die before their loved ones due to stress-related illness. 60% of caregivers have a higher death rate than non-caregivers. It is an extremely challenging, debilitating, frustrating, guilty, bereaving, a toughest challenge that you'd ever want to face. And so what happens is caregivers, when Elaine was first diagnosed, I was a loving husband and she was a loving wife. As this disease progressed, what happened? What happened was her mind was leaving her. I was still thinking myself as a loving husband, not aware of the fact that I was morphing into being a caregiver. And again, a caregiver has to understand that they're a caregiver because of the extra special challenge of emotions and awareness that have to be created. 20 years ago, when Elaine was first diagnosed, this disease could not be cured or prevented. What is February 11th today, 2025? This disease cannot be cured or prevented. Yes, there are some drugs out there, but they don't offer much hope realistically and practically at this moment in time. And so 20 years, really nothing has changed. And when I got that diagnosis, because there was no cure and is no cure, we can say things are absolutely hopeless and nothing then for us. But if we understand and think a little bit, we do have something that's very worthwhile, and that is to make a decision to help our loved one live their best life possible. That is doable. Also to help ourselves as caregivers live our best life possible. How do we help our loved one live their best life possible? By joining their world. As long as I tried to keep Elaine in my world, Elaine, no, it didn't happen on a Thursday, it happened on a Friday. Elaine, you just had a cookie, you can't. Elaine, you just had a blanket, you don't need it. Joining her world. Elaine asked me once, "How are my parents?" I said, "Elaine, your parents are both dead." "No, they're not." "Elaine, I was not the answer. The second time she asked me, "How are my parents?" "Oh," I said, "they're doing really well." I said, "Your mom likes her church work and your dad likes his sports." Elaine, "Oh, that makes me feel so happy." She said, "That makes me feel so happy." Well, that's therapeutic fibbing. Therapeutic fibbing. Two things about therapeutic fibbing. Number one, I tried it the first year of marriage. The second thing about therapeutic fibbing, and I want to be very candid with you, not everyone believes me about this, okay? I want to be honest with you. Not everyone believes me about this. But you remember when Moses was up on Mount Sinai with the Ten Commandments? I was there with him. And so we're up there with these great big tablets of stone. And I say, Mo, how would we... First of all, don't ever call Moses Mo. He absolutely hates it. And so I said, Mo, I said, how are we going to... Moses, I said, how are we going to get these big tablets down to the bottom? He says, well, you're going to help me. So we help. I get all the way down to the bottom, and then there's all people running around. They're looking, and they're reading, and so forth. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff, do's and don'ts, and so forth. And it's written in Arabic Hebrew. And so, no, you know, I didn't know what was they said. But I walked around on the other side of these tablets. And there written, hewn in stone, are the words, therapeutic fibbing is good. Therapeutic fibbing is advisable. Therapeutic fibbing can help your loved one live their best life possible. So how neat is that? But to understand that we have to let go of this person who once was, so we can now embrace this person who now is, because we have no other alternative. And to look at it as being hopeless does not make any sense, because we do have the hope of helping our loved one live their best life possible. And so the book, I wrote the book because, as I said, I learned these things, and I didn't want other people, well, if I could help other people on this journey a little bit, have it make easier for them, that's what I would want to do. And so this book here, I came out with a self-published book that was with a soft cover. And that book was, there's 80,000 of those books in print. My two Elaines, the first 80,000 of them, only like 79,800 left in my garage. But anyway, so Harper Publishing got a look at the softcover book, and they said, this has got to go nationwide because this book has made a difference and impact in people's lives. So they came out with this book. Unfortunately, they charged $27.99, which I think is much too high. We do have them for sale for $20 each, and it includes sales tax if you don't tell the governor. And so you may decide that you would want to buy this book, and I'm not a book salesman. All I do know is the feedback that I have received from people about how this book has made a difference in their lives and better understanding this disease. One of the challenging things is to see our loved one leave us a little bit every day. I have a friend, he retired, and he's enjoying life, and he has dinner one night. He goes to read the news, and he dies of a massive heart attack. The snap of a finger, gone. Well, there was a funeral, and of course people came by to express their sympathy, their condolences. Hard, tough. But as difficult as that was, there was closure. One of the things that a caregiver never gets is closure. You continue your grieving. And many times you continue your grieving and you don't know you're grieving, but you know you're losing your loved one. And I mention that because it is so important for caregivers to understand what is going on, that it is natural to grieve as things move along. Another important lesson, Elaine and I she was at the Lutheran home for the last 8 years of her life, and many times I would join her there as much as I could, many times for lunch. And so we're having lunch one day there in the cafeteria when she's in assisted living memory care, and we're sitting there, and she's starting to cry. I says, Elaine, why are you crying? Well, she says, I'm beginning to love you more than my husband. Well, I didn't ask her what's wrong with your turkey husband. I didn't do that at all. But here is what that meant to me. it meant that it was not necessary for her to know my name in order for our hearts to touch. And I tell that to friends and to neighbors and to relatives and to siblings and to spouses of people whose loved one has dementia. It's not necessary for them to know our name, to remember our name. Yes, it's going to hurt the first time around, but hearts can touch. Hearts can touch not by necessarily knowing the name, but by holding a hand or by giving a hug or a smile or singing a song together or just watching together leaves roll across a lawn. And so, yes, the dire forecast of this disease is not very good. But to know that there are going to be opportunities for seizing moments of joy makes such a big difference. But, I said that 20 years ago it could not be delayed, or prevented. Same thing today. But there was some moments in time when they actually thought Elaine was getting better. And it's the New England Medical, I'll tell you how that happened. So Elaine and I are having lunch, okay? And while we're having lunch, she begins to tell me and others around how intelligent and how good looking I am. Anyway, so she's telling everybody how intelligent. She's telling everyone who can I talk to who's going to take me serious here? Anyway, so she's telling me how intelligent and how good looking I am. Well, there happened to be a doctor and a nurse sitting at the next table, and they heard her tell me how intelligent and how good looking I am, and they looked at me and they said, she's right. So they wrote an article for the New England Medical Journal, Elaine Schreiber's getting better because she knows her husband is intelligent and good looking. Well, there are no dummies at the New England Medical Journal. They wrote back and they said, look, you have to show 3 things where someone is getting better. You only show 2 things. Happenstance would have it, a little bit of time went by, and now Elaine and I are having lunch again at the cafeteria. And by happenstance, the same doctor and the same nurse over here on the side. Now we're having lunch and Elaine begins, how did we meet? How did we meet? How did we ever get together? Elaine, I said, when we were freshmen in high school, I said, we sat next to each other in Latin class, and I fell in love with you. I fell in love with you right away. And I said that I wanted you, I said, not only that, if any boy got within 50 feet of you, I bopped you on the head. I bopped him on the head. And she looked at me, and she said, you would bop him on the head? I said, yes. She looked at me, she says, you're a bullshitter. Well, now they have the 3 things to show that she's getting better. So Elaine said, you're a BSer. And I said, Elaine, I said, that may be true. I said, but let's not tell anyone. Oh, she says, it's too late. She said, everybody already knows. And so as we go on this journey, so here's what happened. The doctor said, when the diagnosis, there are 4 things you should be doing. Numenda and Aricept. Those are 2 drugs that are supposed to delay the progress. Do they really work? I don't know, but we did it. Also, socialization. Make sure that you have contact with people. And then the third, a walk. Walking is the best exercise for the brain. And number 4, a glass of red wine every evening. Elaine got 3 weeks ahead with the glass of red wine and 4 weeks behind in the walking. But that's what the doctor said. Okay, this is the mentality of someone who doesn't understand the importance of joining the world of this person who now is. I would go for a walk with Elaine, and while we would be walking, she would say, look at that pretty bird. Come on, Elaine, we had to get in this half-an-hour walk. Or we'd be walking, look at that pretty flower. Come on, Elaine. If we don't join their world, we miss out on so many moments of joy that we otherwise could have. Yes, her mind was not functioning, but there were still these moments of sharing, of hearts touching and so forth, that I blew completely. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, in addition. So one thing that I also became aware of, and that Alzheimer's is not what you call a chicken casserole disease. If, hypothetically, I go to the hospital and I have open heart surgery, and I go home, people will bring me a chicken casserole. If I have hip surgery and I'm laid up, people bring me chicken casserole. If my wife has Alzheimer's, because people are ignorant of the disease, they don't know what to do. And because they don't know what to do, they don't do anything. And so one of the challenges of being a caregiver is you have to be able to distinguish the feeling of being abandoned with the understanding that you're not being abandoned, people just don't know what to do. And so if you are a friend of a caregiver, or if you know someone who is a caregiver, for you to be able to, number one, just simply acknowledge that you understand what it's tough, what it's like to go through. That would be really good. If you can maybe spend some time so the caregiver can get some respite, that's really good. There's a big effort by the governor's wife, Kathy Evers, to try and create dementia-friendly communities, dementia-friendly churches, dementia-friendly schools, where more people can understand, cancer, that's tough, and people can more easily relate to helping cancer victims than they can with people who have dementia, because it's odd and it's unique. And so, as you take a look at that, one of the things, though, it's a dire forecast and so on, one of the things that this disease does, though, it takes us to places we never thought we would be. In my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would have been invited to speak to the 7th grade at the St. Jacobi School. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would be here with you. That's really pretty neat. And so that reminds me of, I was elected to the Wisconsin State Senate in 1962, a long time ago. One of my responsibilities as a member of the State Senate Education Committee was to go to Washington, D.C. for a meeting. If you take a 5:30 in the morning airplane out of Milwaukee, you can go to Washington, D.C., have your meeting, and come back in the same day, which I was in the process of doing. So it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and we're getting on the airplane, and in front of me is this very distinguished-looking gentleman. You could tell that he was important. He, got a silk tie. Remember one of those tie bars they used to wear, so a really classy guy, attaché case. So he goes to the flight attendant. He says, "Does this plane stop in Detroit?" "Oh," she says, "Yes, sir, the plane stops in Detroit. People get off the airplane, people get on the airplane, we go on to Washington, D.C. "Well," he says, "I have to get off in Detroit." She said, "Yes, sir." "No," he says, "I have to get off in Detroit." She says, "Yes, sir." He says, he says, "I'm inclined to fall asleep. If I fall asleep, I'm going to miss a very important meeting. Will you help me get off of this airplane?" "Yes." "Yes, I will." "Do you promise?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" She says, "Sir, I promise I will get you off of this airplane in Detroit." Now we land in Washington, D.C. And this distinguished-looking gentleman is getting off of the airplane in Washington, D.C. He goes to the flight attendant and he berates her like I've never heard anyone berated before, really, actually yelling. I felt sorry for the flight attendant. After he left, I said, "Oh my goodness," I walked up to her. I said, "I'm so sorry that I've never seen anyone so angry. I've never seen anyone so angry." "Oh," she says, "he was angry. You should have seen the fellow I put off in Detroit." So truly, this disease takes us to places we never thought we would be. And that means that to always have an open heart, to always have an awareness that there are going to be people around you who can really make a big difference. So today I have a walker, but many times I walk with a cane. And what does a cane do? Well, a cane gives you stability, and a cane gives you the courage to move forward. A cane helps you keep your balance. And so I've had many canes in my life helping me as I would try and move along this 20-year journey of my wife disappearing. You should know that one of the very toughest decisions, and that was the decision to have my wife go into assisted living memory care. I wanted to take care of her, and it was till death do us part, no question about that. But what happened was my health was failing. I was really drinking a lot, and my children, then the 4 of them, had an intervention. And they sat me down and they said, Dad, if you don't do something, you're going to be dead before Mom, and we don't want to lose both parents. Well, that was sort of a helpful understanding, because I was just sort of thinking about my own life with my own wife. But there were grandchildren, there were children, there were other people who would have benefited by me being a better kind of person. So they convinced me that Elaine would go into assisted living. And I can remember forever that day that I took her to assisted living. This was at the Lutheran home. Now, before that, for a period of a number of months, she was going to the daycare. And I was so relieved that she would go to daycare because it was something for her, but it was also some respite for me. I had the most difficult time getting her into daycare because she didn't want to go. And finally, it dawned on me that she really liked going to school. She was active in early childhood, so what we did, I said to Elaine, well, how about we go to class? We go to college. Oh, she thought that was great. And so, wink, wink, I work with the people at the daycare, and I get Elaine a spiral notebook, and I get a pen, and she would go in and go to college. She would write down what happened during the course of the day, and then she would come home, and we would review that together. Some mornings, we drive up, and she said, not going in. Can't argue with an Alzheimer's person. So I said, okay. So we drove around, looked at the neighborhood, and drove back. Here we are. Okay, let's go. In other words, we have to understand that there are ways of helping a person with dementia get through the day by joining their world, by redirection, by helping them move forward as they think they want to. So anyway, so we're going to daycare, and now I have to take her to assisted living. And I can remember it was the day after Labor Day. I had worked with the staff at the Lutheran home so I could move in some furniture that was special, some pieces of art, stuff that we hung on the wall, and one piece of furniture to a table with a chair. I had that all there in advance, and now I have to take Elaine. So we leave the house to go to daycare, lie, but we're on our way, and as I walked out the door and went to the car, she was behind me, and I didn't have the heart to ask her to close the door because I knew that was the end of that type of our life together there. So I took her to daycare, not really daycare, but I took her to assisted living. The staff was just great. I said, I'm going to Madison, Elaine, like I told her many times when I was going. So then I walked out into the parking lot. It was a bright, sunshiny day. And one of Elaine's classmates was there, a young man in his early 40s. And he was standing talking with his wife who was bringing him into daycare with another person. And I thought, wait a minute. My wife is in her early 70s, and this young man is 43. So much to be thankful for. So much to be thankful that we had these moments in time, maybe an additional 20 years compared to what this family had. But anyway, so he looked at me. Oh, he said, how are you? I said, fine. Oh, he says, I love that blue shirt. He said, could I have that blue shirt? I said, yeah, well, I had another shirt in the car, so I said, okay, yeah, you can have that blue shirt. You come with me. So we went to my car, and I took off the blue shirt, gave him the shirt. He put on the blue shirt. I put on another shirt, and he walked back, and he said to his friends and to his wife, oh, look at my blue shirt. That made him very happy. Well, some people think that it was really nice of me to give him my shirt off my back. But the truth of the matter is, I had just held up a Quick Trip store, and they were looking for a young fat guy with a blue shirt. And here they saw this taller fellow with a mustache with a blue shirt, and I completely got away with the whole gig. And so what I thought we would do here is we can open it up for questions and answers and so forth. What time is this supposed to go till noon, or when should you be out of here? I don't want to overstay my welcome. Noon? Okay. Hopefully I won't have to keep you that long. The two things we're going to do, okay? What I think we'll have the questions and answers, and what we will do with the question and answer session, I will try and repeat the question so everyone can hear it. And you should know, if you ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, I will rephrase your question. So there'll be nothing that you can ask me that I won't be able to respond to. And so, but also I want to talk to you for a moment about courage, prayer, and persistence. And I have not verified this story, but it could be true. So there was this woman who had this parrot. And all this parrot would say all the time, Polly wants a party, Polly wants a party. Well, she was expecting company from out of town, and she was worried that if her parrot only knows Polly wants a party, Polly wants a party, what are her friends going to think of her? She becomes so troubled that she decides to see her minister. And she goes to the minister and she says, Pastor, you have to help me. I have this parrot, Polly wants a party, Polly wants a party. That's all it says. My friends are coming to visit, and they're going to think less of me because that's all. The pastor said, this is a miracle. He said, I myself have two parrots, Peter Parrot and Paul Parrot. And he says, I've had them for 7 years. And all those parrots do, Peter Parrot and Paul Parrot, all they do is pray. They pray from morning till night, every day of every week of every month of every year for 7 years they've been praying. What we should do is take your parrot and put it in with my parrots, and my parrots will be a good influence on your parrot. Well, they agreed. So what happens is the lady went home, brought her parrot over into the minister's home, and brought the parrot inside the house, and they opened up the cage for the parrots, and so in went Polly with Peter Parrot and Paul Parrot. And sure enough, Polly said, Polly wants a party, Polly wants a party. And Peter Parrot looked at Paul Parrot and said, our prayers have finally been answered. So one of the things that came about before I'm ready to go to print, I find a series of notes and journals that Elaine was keeping since her diagnosis. I went through her notes and journals with my two daughters, and we were able to capture an understanding of what it's like to be diagnosed with this illness and move forward. And so what I think I'll maybe do is just read one or two of her notes and to sort of give you a sense, and then we'll go for questions and answers. So when she was first diagnosed, she wrote a letter of what she said, dear loved ones, in quotes, dear loved ones. And so she writes, it wasn't until a few weeks ago that I really had to say, yes, I do have Alzheimer's. I had read of signs that indicate Alzheimer's, like getting overly upset for no reason and having trouble with names and directions. But I still didn't think it was a problem for me. But in hindsight, for too long, I've been getting lost driving, having trouble keeping days straight, and difficulties with names and schedules. I still feel like I could handle it. It won't get worse. But this morning, I started reading about the mid-stage of Alzheimer's in hopes of preparing myself better. I realized I'm not very far away. That is most scary, but I have to accept it. One of the things her notes did was to point out how much of a lifeline I was for her. She wrote in a number of times, please take care of yourself for me as well as for you. Remember I said we can't fight this disease head on, but we can help our loved one live their best life possible? Well, we help it by joining their world, but also we help our loved one by living our best life possible. Hypothetically speaking, we win a multi-billion-dollar lottery. I win it. And I said, those people at St. Jacobi, those are really nice people that were with me that day on what is today, Tuesday in the morning. So we're all going to go for a cruise in the Gulf of America. And so we're going to go for a cruise in the Gulf of America, all my wonderful new friends, and everything is wonderful. Now we're sailing along and one of you falls overboard. And we throw you a lifeline and you're saved. No, the lifeline breaks and you're done for. A caregiver is a lifeline to their loved one. And what happens is caregivers, because they don't take care of themselves, they gnaw at that lifeline a little bit every day. And so a little bit, that lifeline becomes more frayed every day. Why, how do caregivers fray this lifeline? We don't get enough sleep. We don't eat right. We don't get enough exercise. We don't confront the fact we could be grieving. We don't take care of ourselves. And what happens is also we become irrationally irritable. And so when we want to take care of the one we really love, we may be incapable of doing it because our lifeline breaks because we ourselves haven't taken care of ourselves. One of the things that comes about, particularly for men, we don't like to ask for directions. We don't want to ask for directions. But also we men don't want to have any help. And so we try and do it by ourselves. Wrong. To ask for help means you're not giving up. If we're surrounded by an enemy and we know that we're not going to be able to escape, we've got to ask for help. We've got to go ask for help because it means we're not giving up, and it's a matter of courage. And so caregivers have to understand that. You can't destroy yourself in advance. Why? That does not make any sense, particularly for children and for grandchildren. So quickly, one of the things that begins to be a challenge is how the person sometimes thinks they're well and sometimes is aware that they have Alzheimer's, and so they're trying to somehow or another get their way through it. So here she writes, I wish my Alzheimer's would dissipate. I'd like to be the smart wife and mother I used to be. Now I have to waste so much time trying to figure out what I should be doing without seeming as smart as I used to be. I need to rely on Marty for everything, and I'm very lucky he continues to keep me. Life gets more difficult every day. There's just two more that I want to read you, and shows how it's a challenge of where you're either in the Alzheimer's world or in your own world. And here she writes, I am not enjoying my role anymore as Marty's wife. Because of his having concerns about my Alzheimer's, he doesn't let me be me. He doesn't let me go for a walk if I want to, or to the store alone. I used to appreciate him, what I thought was concern, but he holds me captive much too much. I'm going to try to have a second opinion because I really don't think I have any problem. I know how to drive or walk any place I want to, but he doesn't believe me, and I hate the control he has placed on me. I don't even think I have Alzheimer's per se. My favorite one, and we'll close with this and then we'll do questions. She writes, this was one of her last writings when she was aware. She writes, life is good, and I plan to have it continue that way until my children tell me it's time for a nursing or something like that. This is realistic with what my Alzheimer's book says about my future, but till then, I will try my best to be normal, whatever that means, and keep my happy side of life always continuing. I'm lucky to have such a good family and many friends to help me get through all this. And so another great day to thank the Lord and smile, smile, smile. So it is another great day to thank the Lord and to smile and smile. So this is great. Any thoughts, ideas? Yes?
I was just going to say when you said about putting yourself into their world, we experienced in our family many years ago, my aunt developed Alzheimer's, but her husband and her daughter would never want to acknowledge it. It was always, well, there's that little part of mom's going to get better. I, having worked in the medical field for many years, I recognized it just from patients coming into our office. I knew what it was. And, one example was my cousin would come home from work, and now my aunt is more into the throes of her dementia, and into the Alzheimer's. And she would come home from work, and my aunt would look at her and say, "Oh, do you know where my daughter Lynn is?" It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We're picking up. Sorry.
That's okay.
That's not gonna work, so you might just have to talk loud.
Yeah, I will. So she would come home from work, and my aunt would come up to her and say, "Do you know where my daughter Lynn is?" So instead of saying something, my cousin would get so frustrated because they would never want to share with us as her family that she had this disease. I would question her, and she would just shut me down. "No, that's not what Mom has." And I knew she did. And she would come up to her and say, "Do you know where my cousin Lynn is?" And she would say, "Well, I'm your daughter, I'm Lynn. Why don't you know who I am?" And I tried to explain to her, they just would not hear it, and they just lived in this misery for at least 10 years until I finally I had to actually be strong with my voice and yell and say, "Look, she is not getting better. You need to make a decision. This is what she has." And finally, for some reason, the two of them woke up and finally placed her into a care facility because it was wearing them down, and I saw it every time I was with them, and they just would not accept this. And it just wore them down. It wore my uncle, I hate to say, into his grave because they just would not admit that there was an issue.
If you heard what she said, it's one of the most challenging aspects of this disease. One of the reasons also I wrote the book, because I personally experienced someone who I'm very close to deny it. And of course, as you said, it creates really emotional, physical anxiety, havoc in all ways. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. But sometimes it's hard to convince them. My brother-in-law would not be convinced that my sister had dementia.
Right.
And anyway, so thank you for that. Thank you. Yes?
Did you find that you were able to tell that today was going to be a fairly lucid day? Did it kind of go in and out really, really quickly? Her presence of mind?
The question is, how could I possibly have lost the election for governor in 1978? The question was, how are my days like? Would that be a capsule of your...
Just could you tell?
No, the things you never... That's what is so challenging about being an Alzheimer's caregiver, and I think why I drank so much. Because you think you made it through the day, and you wake up the next morning and you say, "I made it through yesterday, and we handled that," and then all of a sudden you get a curveball or two, because something's going off the rails, and either Elaine went out the door without me knowing about it, or she put the car keys into the dish. Just something, you know. And so you almost have to, if you can envision what it'd be like to be a shortstop for the Milwaukee Brewers, you got to be ready to move anyway very quickly because you don't know. And again, because you think you have solved that one point, you haven't, because the disease is progressive and it's a new day the next day. And so again, to caregivers, please be aware to ask for help and to make sure that you keep that lifeline strong. Thank you. Yes?
Can you explain sundowners a little bit? I mean, I know there's a time, usually when it gets dark out, where moods can change with people with Alzheimer's. Is that because of the darkness? Is that because of the hour of the day? Does it have something to do with the mood? Why is that?
The question is, how could I possibly have lost the race for governor back in? We're talking about sundowners?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, understand this. I am not a doctor, and I can only tell you what I have lived and experienced. Sundowners, I believe, is an actual kind of experience that people with dementia go through. My dad was a sundowner. He would get sort of odd and walking around, when it's at the sundown time, and not so much with Elaine. But I do know that it affects different people in different ways, and something that an individual should be aware of if they think their loved one has to confront that kind of a situation. And I could tell you more, but I think better that you get it from a more professional person than me. One of the questions that we get, which is really a very important question, and that is, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? A very important question and also a very important answer. Dementia is like an umbrella, which means that the brain is not working right for some reason. Well, why is the brain not working right? Well, it could be for a mix-up in medications. It could be because of depression. It could be because of Lewy bodies. It could be because of Alzheimer's. It could be because of an operable brain tumor. So understand that to not remember what the car keys are for may mean you have dementia, but why is your brain not working right? So it is so very important to get a proper diagnosis so you know how you can then move forward, both for your loved ones and for yourself and for those people around you. So very important. So the umbrella like cancer, well, what kind of cancer? Lung cancer, heart cancer, so forth and so forth. Dementia, brain not working right. Why? So, all right. Well, yes, way in back. Hi.
Did you notice a big difference in?
Excuse me. I'm going to ask you there.
Did you notice a big difference in her physicality, going from, was she able to exercise throughout, or did you see it really taking a toll physically as well?
Okay, the question is, what did Elaine go through physically? Would that be the question?
Yeah.
Sort of?
Yeah.
She maintained her physicality pretty good. And I think, and I had, she did not gain a lot of weight. She did not lose a lot of weight. She pretty much remained the same physical person. The second Elaine remained pretty much the same physical person that the first Elaine was. Now, it sometimes affects more people differently, where they want to eat more, and of course, you don't get hardly too much exercise either, unless there's a special effort. But physically, it's pretty much the same, both Elaines. Yeah. Yes. Okay, we'll go here. Yes.
Okay. My son, brother-in-law had a stroke. And my point, I'll try and simplify that 10 years my sister took care of him at home. The nurses didn't believe that he understood things. My sister would say, well, he understands. No, he has absolutely no cognitive at all. He has nothing. He registers nothing. Well, I have a story when St. Jacobi was collecting coats for Christ Church. I would go to Goodwill and I'd try on coats. Hey, this is nice. They're inexpensive, so I'd buy the coats. Went by Faith and Dick, and I tried them on. And he was watching, and he put one of them on, and he went, bah. This is how he would communicate. He would say, bah. My point is, though, that the nurses and the doctors don't even get it. Sometimes, at what point a person mentally is going on, Well, he kept saying, bah. And I go, what? Dick, what? Well, one of the coats, he didn't want me to give away. I said, what, you want me to keep this one? I still wear a coat that has an eagle on the back of it. It says Eagle Electric. Not one person in
20 years now has ever asked me, who works for Eagle Electric? But I wear this coat in remembrance of Dick because the only way he could communicate to me was with Bob. Because I said, I'm going to take those now.
Uh-huh.
And we understood that he wanted me to keep that coat.
Yeah.
And they sometimes, my point is the doctors and nurses, and I think with Alzheimer's and mental, they have this idea of what is and what isn't. And it's always much more complicated, guys, complicated to just accept what is and what isn't. You know?
Anytime you can help me make a presentation to a nursing group, to any group, I would want to do it, because you're absolutely correct. They miss the point many times. You know, the doctor who told me with Elaine's diagnosis, there's more to it than just 4 things, you know, to be prepared for what's going on. And same thing with nurses, you know, correcting, no, you know, you're not going to milk the cows because there are no cows, you know, you're an idiot. So anyway, but thank you for that. So, yes?
My first husband had a dementia, but he became violent. My children would hide under their beds, and I couldn't hide. And eventually, I had to pack up my children and leave. And he then went to church and told everybody that my wife took off with another man. I was kicked out of church for leaving my husband.
Gracious.
So they all believed what he said. Yet when he would come home after work, he would become violent with me. What is the sense of that? He never was diagnosed with dementia. He died shortly after. He was highly diabetic, so he just died shortly. But he was never diagnosed. My whole life was ruined, and his was fine. What is that?
Well, first of all, I'm very sorry that you have that experience. That's horrible. It sounds to me like Lewy bodies, dementia, that there's different parts of the brain. Again, I'm not a doctor, but what I have learned a little bit is there's different parts of the brain. And all these different parts of the brain cause the body to do certain things. And it was affecting apparently that part of the brain, which caused him to come up with these ideas about what he thought was happening but not happening. And unfortunately, your experience has been shared by other people, you know, where they just go off and think, yeah, it's tough. I'm sorry about that. So, yes?
I also had a friend. Now, when you, as a friend, recognize things and stuff that friend is doing is very odd, and you call a family member to say, you know, I think your mom, oh, that's just mom, you know, she loves to shop or whatever. Well, no, you don't love to shop when you go into the grocery store and they have the carts with all the discounted stuff. You don't buy that whole cart of merchandise and take it home. Like, what is a woman going to do with a whole cart full of motor oil? And I kept saying, no. And I was explaining this, and he said, no, that's just mom. She loves to shop. But, So finally, one night, she got in her car, and I knew something was wrong because when we were going places, she had to write down directions. And she thought she was going to a restaurant in Brookfield Square. They found her walking Highway 39 into Plains, Illinois, because she was going to get food for all those people in her house. Well, luckily, some people saw her walking on the freeway, and this was 2 o'clock in the morning, where I guess that's what she thought. So the sheriff got a hold of her son, and it took his mother, who could have been dying, got hit by a car on the freeway, to finally recognize oh yeah, mom's got a problem. And especially since both of her parents had Alzheimer's, so that should have clicked. But it just did not click with him. And, you know, and then finally figured out, oh, I guess there's something wrong with my mom. So I better put her somewhere, and that's exactly what happened. But he just would not listen to me.
That happens. So, yeah. All right, it's 12 noon. You've been great. I don't like golf. And if I would like golf, I couldn't golf anyway, but I don't like golf. But if you would tell me about what it feels like to hit a hole-in-one, I would say it's like to be with really good people at St. Jacobi, to just share and to talk and to visit. I do have books for sale, and I'll go sit back there if any of you would like a book. I would be happy to autograph it. If you want Abraham Lincoln's autograph, I can give you that, or whatever kind of autograph you want. But you've been absolutely terrific, so thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for coming, too. It's great to see all of you. And again, you'll be back there with books for sale. The books are $20, and he'd be glad to sign them.
Yes. Thanks.
Thanks again, all of you, for coming today, too. Oh, sure.
Very much. I wish you God's blessings.
We used to be on the south side of Milwaukee. We were 13th and Mitchell, right on Forest Home and Forest Home and Mitchell and 13th Street.
Yeah.
We were there we're 150 years old.
Oh, my
our
God.
congregation is. So we were there for years and years.
Situation here.
Oh, it is, yes.
Shake your hand and say thank you.